Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and I'm standing outside one of my commercial rental properties I bought in June of 2022. We are now in February of 2023, which is crazy. And this property's been going phenomenally well. Slight hiccup here, but the rest of it has been going great. We'll talk about that hiccup and how to avoid it from becoming a bigger hiccup as well, and some different things we can do which may or may not work in this case. Hopefully we can avoid evicting this tenant, but you never know for sure. Of course, love the likes, love the comments, love the shares, love seeing new subscribers as well. It is Fun Car Friday, and I've got the Lotus back, so that's great. It had some overheating issues, those are fixed. Luckily, no other damage was done. I was slightly worried about that, but this is one of my most fun cars to drive. The steering, the power, it is so much fun, and I miss driving it, so glad to have it back. And yes, people can never accuse me of not driving my cars. Sometimes maybe I drive them into situations I shouldn't, but it's not too bad here. All right, so this property I bought for $865,000 in June. It was completely vacant. The seller had kicked all the tenants out, which was something you do not do if you want to get the most money you can out of a property and you've got tenants in there who are paying close to market rent. Don't kick them out. That really decreases the value of the property, and there's just tons of stuff everywhere as well. And the previous owner actually came and got a lot of it, which was great, but there was still a lot of work we had to do. But we rented this unit right here behind the trucks to a diesel mechanic. That was 4,000 square feet or so. And then this was rented to an auto detailing place for $2,000 a month. Then we got a garage behind that building over there and some land rented for $800 a month. This building right here was just rented to a church for $2,200 a month. And then a diesel mechanic decided to rent these Quonset huts right here for $750 a month as well. So I thought about turning those into storage units, fixing them up, renting them out. I could have gotten way more than $750 a month if I did that, but it would have taken way more work fixing them up and renting them. So it was kind of an easy solution just for both of us to say, hey, I need the space, you need to rent it, and let's make a deal. So that worked out well. Like I said, things have been going fairly well, except that this tenant stopped paying rent. And so I feel somewhat bad doing these videos and talking about tenants and different things, but I also make them to educate and help others. So I try and give others an idea of how to avoid situations, maybe make them better, maybe not get themselves too deep in a hole. So this tenant was late a couple months ago, and on my commercial leases, a lot of my commercial tenants, I actually work with those tenants directly a lot of the times because commercial is trickier, it's different, there's a lot of different things going on. I know the properties very well. On my residential units, multifamily, even mixed use, other ones, my office handles that property management. I don't talk to the tenants. They may or may not know me, but for the most part, I don't deal with them. If there's issues, we have our staff in the office acts as the property managers, but I do directly text. This tenant, some of our other tenants, they have my number. I talk to them. They hardly ever bother me at all, or I wouldn't give them my number, but once in a while we talk. And I texted this tenant and said, hey, you're back on rent, what's going on? And he told me, said, sorry, I got a new bookkeeper. We'll get that rent paid right away. My fault, won't happen again. And as a landlord and investor, you hear stuff like that all the time. So if you're new, if you're starting out and you've got tenants to start saying things like that, maybe it's legit. Maybe it's 100% legit. Maybe that's what's going on. But remember, there's an 80% chance there's something else going on behind those words, and that's not really what's happening. And that happens in commercial, residential, whatever type of tenant you have. I typically have more issues with residential than commercial. Very rarely do we have commercial tenant issues. I think we had one commercial tenant where we started an eviction, but we didn't have to go through with it. They moved out before the eviction date. We've had some tenants who haven't paid, who've had some issues, but they've always been professional about it, worked things out, talked to us. and we've come up with an agreement or deal or something, or they were able to catch back up and things went okay. We've had a couple instances where we didn't get all the rent we were supposed to get. We parted ways sooner than later, but we didn't have to go through an eviction. And that's the most ideal situation, because going through an eviction is extremely expensive, costs a lot of money, time, lawyers' fees, because we use lawyers because I don't want to screw it up myself. I've done that before. And if they trash the place, there's a great chance of that happening through an eviction. It just takes longer, which is eating into your carrying costs, property taxes, if you have loans, financing costs, utilities, all of that. So if you can avoid an eviction, by all means do so. And you might see me having a lot of evictions lately on my residential properties, and we've had a lot more than usual this last year. And a lot of that is because of inherited tenants. We buy properties that need a lot of work and have tenants, who aren't ones we choose, where we really take our time and go through a screening process to try and avoid those issues. So we still try to avoid evictions in those cases, but a lot of those cases it's just unavoidable. That's unfortunately the easiest route, is to have to go through an eviction, especially where we had squatters, things like that happening. And it's frustrating, but that's just how the world works sometimes. So my whole point is here, we hear stories a lot. We hear people telling us all kinds of reasons for why they can't pay rent, why it's late. Some are legit, but as a new investor, you have to realize there's a really good chance they're not legit, and it's going to keep happening. So if that starts to happen, keep a very close eye on things, make sure communication is back and forth all the time, and that you try and sniff out any major problems sooner rather than later, because if you have to be tough too. One reason why I'm not an amazing residential manager is I don't like, having to tell people you have to pay late fees, you have to do this, you have to pay rent, and being stern with them. It's not something I have fun doing, and I'm not as good as it as some of my staff. So that's why I let them do that. And then something else to consider here too, I had someone pull up to my right and I don't know what they're doing, so that's why I stopped the video abruptly in case I leave this. But anyway, so you've got to be stern with them, you've got to charge late fees, you've got to tell them how things work. You can't keep giving them slack or they'll keep taking it and take advantage of you, commercial and residential. So this tenant, we had talked to him, told him, hey, make sure you get your rent in on time. I understand the bookkeeping issue, but got to keep a close eye on that. Next month, same thing happened, didn't pay rent. I texted him, said, hey, what's going on? He said, oh, it's been real slow. We haven't been able to pay rent because we're not having any business. And every time I come here, there's nobody here. So yeah, I imagine it's slow because I haven't seen anybody here working at all. And so he said, don't worry, next week I'll bring some more. I'll bring rent, it'll be in there. Next week comes, rent doesn't come, and text him again, no response at all, nothing. So that's when we post an eviction notice, starting the eviction. Really sooner than later, you want to do that. And it's not just because you want to evict them, but a lot of times posting that eviction notice will get their attention in the essence that they will say, oh, he's serious, I really have to do something, or, I'm gonna have to leave, and they'll pay rent right away. So that's the first step, is your eviction notice isn't always to start the eviction, although it can, is to get their attention, get them to catch up on rent. If they catch up on rent, great, fantastic, amazing. If they don't, then you might have to go, through, that guy's going like 90 and a 30. That's not very smart. There are cops out here. But anyway, if that doesn't get their attention, they don't contact you, then you might have to go through the eviction process. But it's really, if you can work something out, if you can tell them, hey, we'll let you out of your lease, if you just leave, we don't have to go through eviction. I know that sucks, but sometimes that's better than going through it. Now, with this commercial property, we have a pretty long-term lease. I think it's a 2-year lease. They owe us a whole lot of money because they're not very far into that lease. If we really want to, we could go through court and we could ask for a judgment, try and get a lot of that money back. And we usually don't do that on residential properties because a lot of times tenants don't have the money. You're chasing, it's like squeezing juice out of a turnip is a common saying. You're chasing money you're never going to get. And so that can be tricky. But with commercial leases, there might be some more opportunity there. And we do have our commercial tenants personally guarantee their business leases. So it's not just in the business name, it's also in the tenant's personal name as well. So that's another thing you can look at in your leases, and talk with your attorneys and figure out what the best way to do that is with your state laws and everything. But there can be more opportunity in commercial leases too to get some of that money back. So that can be quite the threat too to your commercial tenants when they realize how much money they actually owe if you want to go after a judgment, go after their full lease, and go that route too. So this one is now a month behind. On Monday they'll be 2 months behind, so not a good situation. They're not texting me, not a good situation. We posted the eviction to get that started as soon as we can. If we don't hear from them, then unfortunately we might have to start that eviction. I'm hoping they contact me and say, hey, we'll work something out, maybe we want out of our lease, and we can go from there. The good news is this property, like I said, is making lots of money even with this tenant not paying, because we rented it for a lot more than we thought we would, which is nice. And I've had so many people ask me to rent this spot. When we had our for lease sign up, everybody wanted to rent this spot right here. They either wanted this spot or the big shop right there. And it took longer to rent that one, the other spot behind it. But this should have no problem renting whatsoever. It's got frontage on a pretty busy road. That is fantastic. It's got shop, space right there, garage bays, a little office. It's set up perfect for a car mechanic, a detailer, something like that. And there's tons of demand for that. So after we rented this, I had so many people coming, asking us, calling us to want to rent it. So that shouldn't be a problem either. So annoying that this happened. Maybe it'll still work out. Who knows? Maybe it can get caught up and it won't be an issue in the future. But those are some ways to try and fix it. Try and alleviate tenants who aren't paying without going through a full eviction. But in some cases you do have to. And like I said, this would be my first commercial eviction if we have to go through with it after 6 years and 25 some commercial properties, something like that. So, and like I said, we don't have very many residential evictions either on properties that we find the tenants on, where we source the tenants. A lot of those are inherited. So we haven't had an eviction on our own tenants for a very, very long time. Although we might have one of those coming up soon. That's just for a little garage. And we'll see how that works. All right, there's an update. We'll see how this goes. I'll keep you all updated. Still love this property, fantastic property. I still need to figure out if I want to sell it or keep it. It definitely makes money, and definitely worth a whole lot more than I paid for it. It might be worth twice what I paid for it now with all the increased income we have. So that's a good thing, and why real estate investors are able to put up with some issues like this that happen once in a while. All right, thanks for watching. Love the likes, love the comments, love the shares. Keep those coming. And yep, I'm gonna get back in this fun car and head back to the office now.